This is the SAU Report, a program featuring interviews with the faculty, staff, students, and alumni of Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the SAU Report. I'm Lori Porter.
And I'm Sally Camp.
Today we're talking to Mr. Calvin McNeal and Dr. Larry McNeal, professors here at Southern Arkansas University and coordinators for Level 1 of the Field Experience Program. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
Welcome.
Dr. McNeal graduated from Southern State College in 1962. After his graduation, he started coaching track and football at Fred Whiteside Junior High School in Camden. After 3 years of coaching, he left to get his master's degree in education at Auburn University. He received his doctorate degree at North Texas State University. Dr. McNeal came to SAU as a professor of physical education.
Mr. Neal came to Southern State College in 1966 and began teaching in the physical education department and coaching football. And since that time, I believe you have accumulated one of the most varied backgrounds I've ever seen. He served as assistant to the vice president of academic affairs, the director of continuing education, and as the university's registrar. And now he, is serving as an associate professor of education and an assistant certification officer. And you know that as a nosy school teacher, I have to know what an assistant certification officer is.
Well, the assistant certification officer does those things that the certification officer does not want to do. Any student who's completed the requirements for a licensure in Arkansas must be certified. And the state requires our signature stating that these students have met the state requirements. In addition to our regular BSc students, we have what we call deficiency removal students. Students who have degrees in other areas coming back, wanting to get certified to teach. And so I serve as an advisor to those students, making sure that, again, they have met minimum state requirements. And two, we have students coming back wanting to get certified in additional areas. And so I work with those students, making sure they have met those requirements.
Okay, so it's certification as education goes for teaching certificates. It's all right? Good.
Well, Dr. McNeal, what brought about the development of this program and why was it developed?
Back in the mid-'80s, the National Council for Accreditation of Teacher Education reformed its standards and upgraded them quite a bit. And the requirement there was that all education majors had to have a minimum of 3 field experiences. At that time, we had 2 field experiences, so we were required to add a field experience because of the national accreditation standards. Arkansas requires all teacher education programs in the state to be nationally accredited.
What exactly do the students do when they go out into the field? You talk about the field experience. What exactly do they do when they go out into the field?
Okay, the students are enrolled in a companion course, the Introduction to Education class, which is the first class that education majors take.
Right.
And they have 24 hours of field experience, and they are trying to decide, number one, if they really want to be a teacher. It's a sophomore level course.
Okay.
So they examine that first. And then if they decide that they do want to become a teacher, we would like for them to examine the age groups and pick a preference there. They can go elementary or middle school or secondary.
Right.
And then also it's an opportunity for them to look and see what subject area specializations that they might be interested in.
Okay.
Well, we've established then that this program is for students who are interested in going into education. But I'd like to ask Mr. Neal now, we talk about level 1. Is there a level 2 and level 3? What other experiences do they enroll in?
Our students have 3 field experiences prior to going into the classroom as a teacher. In field 2, students are assigned to the subject matter area and a teacher. They work with that teacher with a group of students in their subject matter area. Then in level 3 is their student teaching block.
Okay. Then we meet this class, or you would meet this class as a group, level 1. How often?
Well, the class itself, the 3-hour class, meets 3 days a week. The lab has 24 hours of observation experience in which we will meet with that group at least 2 to 3 times prior to their going out to the public schools.
Okay. Dr. McNeal, what kinds of things go on in this class that you meet 3 times a week?
It's a survey class, and the first unit we cover is motivation for teaching and what would be good motivation and what might be frivolous. We look at the job market. We go into philosophy of education, history of education. We look at curriculum. We go into school law. There are just a variety of topics that we cover in that class.
And do you have guest speakers?
We have guest speakers. They're usually school principals, school teachers, counselors, social service agency people that come in and talk about kids that have problems and things like that. So we usually have a variety of speakers come into the class. And one thing we didn't say about Field 1 that we should explain, and that is that in Field 1, these students don't go to one teacher. They go to teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade. And the reason for that is student evaluations from back in 1987, when we used to put them with one teacher in one grade level. And these kids are trying to decide what they want to do. So they requested that we do this. So they visit up to 20 different teachers in all grade levels. So it's a unique program. Not many schools do that.
So it is across the curriculum?
It is all across the curriculum. All subject matter areas. We go into special education classes. We've put some in the preschool classes that are now being held on campuses. So we try to give them a wide variety of experiences. They go to the library sometimes and talk to the librarian about what they do, or the counselor.
Do you try to let these students go to different schools to experience different teachers, or do they stay in one certain school?
Because of the logistics and scheduling, they go to one school system. But now in Magnolia, for example, that's 3 different school buildings that they go to. So we try to schedule those experiences in schools that are in each of the different directions around Magnolia. So that commuters can come in, for example, if somebody's commuting from Louisville, then they can stop at Stamps and do the observation there and then return to campus for class.
Well, do most area schools participate in this? Is it hard to get schools and teachers to let someone come into their classrooms, or how do you do that?
They have been, we have asked schools to participate with us, and we have excellent cooperation from the public schools. They understand that they're getting a better quality teacher through these extended field experiences, and it's just a valuable experience. So we have 9 different school districts that participate, and we've never been turned down by any school district.
That's good.
Mr. Neal, what effects have you seen in the participating students? Maybe whether or not they even choose to stay in education, or what are some of the things you've seen?
Well, one thing, they're excited about what they're seeing in the public schools. They are amazed at what some of the smaller school systems are like. Many of these youngsters are from large school systems, and they have not had the opportunity to go into a small school. But they do have this opportunity to make a decision, do I want to teach? And we have students who say, no, I don't want any part of this. It's too time consuming, it's too demanding, it's too much paperwork, there's too many rules and regulations. But that's a good decision, because those people have a better understanding of the school system. They're going to be our taxpayers. They're going to be our future school board members, and can provide some leadership perhaps. On the other hand, we have those who just say, I'm going to teach elementary. And they get out there and they see the youngsters and they decide they're too demanding. They all want the same thing at the same time. They're a bunch of little horrors. I had one lady who told me in her journal that she was going to stay in education, but she wanted a more mature student. But she went home after her elementary experience and told her husband that if he wanted kids, they would adopt and they would all be grown. And I had a guy that's much larger than I am, secondary, that just fell in love with the little kids. And he changed to elementary and is now teaching a 4th grade class. So they do make decisions. Some say, this just solidified my initial decision, which is good.
So that's one of the purposes then of the program, is to help students who think they want to teach decide maybe on a further course of study? Is that?
Like back in the dark ages when I was in school, I did not have any classroom experience until I did student teaching. It's too late then.
You've spent 4 years preparing for a career you may not even want.
Right.
Is there a screening process similar to the one now being used for teachers or experienced teachers for renewal, up for renewal?
I think Dr. McNeal might have some ideas about that.
They are not screened for this initial class. Now, to be admitted to the program of teacher education, they are screened. But this course is one that they take like Introduction to Business. If a student thinks he might be interested in business, then he takes Introduction to Business. Well, they take Introduction to Education the same way.
Right.
And so they are not screened for that. Now, we are, if we know there's a problem with a student, we will not place that student in the field experience because obviously that's a sensitive situation. And we have, in fact, this last semester, we refused to place a student. We are working on that to try to get that more refined. And, you know, they have a background check on teachers now,
Yeah, right.
felony convictions and so on. So we've been discussing that and deciding how we're going to implement that to screen students for this initial experience. Now, they're observers only, so it's not like they're working with children, but still.
But they are very close
Right,
to the children.
and we would like to tighten that up.
What are the duties of the collaborating teacher, I believe the classroom teacher is called? What are some of the things that teacher can do to aid the student?
We expect our observers to act as professionals. The teacher only responsibility basically is to provide an area for that student to sit. And then the student will be taking notes on the teacher on things like methods, motivational techniques, classroom decorations, interaction between students, and things of this nature. As far as the teacher responsibility, I mean, she checks the roll as whether the student shows up or not and provides that seat them. That's it. I mean, we don't ask him to do anything special.
So when you go out into the schools to talk with people about being a collaborating school and teacher, it's not as if you're putting an extra burden on them in the classroom. It's something that will benefit the student, but it's not extra work for the teacher.
In fact, we have changed the program. We do an evaluation from the collaborating teachers every semester, and we analyze that, compile it, including all the comments, and then Mr. Neal and I meet and with any other field experience supervisor and discuss that, and we report that to the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, and we make recommendations based on that. Some of the recommendations that we have made and implemented are having the lab the first 2 hours of the day, because we found out in elementary school, the teacher said after 10 o'clock we have milk break, we have recess, we have early lunch, we have naps in the afternoon, and they put their little heads down, you know, and it's not much to observe. So we changed and went to, because we had labs all throughout the day at first, and we changed and went to morning lab totally. And also they told us that they did not want them there Monday through Friday. It was less hassle for them if they would come 1 or 2 days a week. So we schedule that now in the schools outside Magnolia for Tuesday only. And that's because of the collaborating teachers' request, which we try to cooperate with them as much as we possibly can and still get our students out there.
I want to add to what Dr. McNeal said. So many of the public schools now have gone to a block system.
Right.
And that kind of threw us in a bind, but we have been able to work through that, and now we will schedule them on Tuesday only, that's true, but they may have to go on a Thursday for at least two visits, because the block schedule has made this a different situation. And we try to get them a total of 24 hours of observation.
How do some of the students in the classrooms take the observers? Do they have any, they ever get attached? I don't know if they ever do anything with them. Or...
We talk to our students before we send them out into the public schools.
Right.
We make them aware of some things that are going to happen. For example, elementary schools, they're going to want to touch you and hold on to you and talk to you. There's a line there that they can't cross. At the secondary level, these students have to be very careful, because when you get into senior high school, there's not a big age difference.
Right.
And so you have some students who will have high school students come on to them, and they have to not cross that line.
Right.
They are to be professional educators. We ask them to conduct
Even,
themselves.
they should also be professional outside of their schoolwork. I mean, I've known friends who've gone into the field experience and they've seen the high school people and they've been doing things that they shouldn't have been doing in public, and then they ask them about it in school. How do y'all go about talking to them about things that come up as drinking alcohol if they're 21 years of age, or smoking outside and these high school students see them? What do you?
We go over the role of a teacher and the fact that they are a prominent person in the community, and we tell them, all of these observers, to think like a teacher from day one. And even when they come to class, we ask them not to wear caps in class because teachers don't wear caps in class. And we stress that you're, like it or not, there are certain standards that are expected of teachers.
Right.
So we harp on that quite a bit in the classroom. We enforce that rigidly, and we tell the students, the observers, that if a principal calls us, and all a teacher has to do is report it, and if a teacher reports some improper conduct, which has happened rarely, but it has happened, then we contact the student and we go through due process. But if after we go through due process, if they violated our policies, then they're out of the program. They're out of that class for that semester, and we've had to do that on a few occasions.
Just because of what they were doing in their private
Right, and it might
lives,
be something as you would think might not be too serious, but we talk about dress.
Right.
And we had a couple of fellows that wore that when we had our ROTC program here, wore their combat boots and uniforms to a small elementary school. And the principal met them at the door and said, "You can't come in." And once we verified that, because we told them that they couldn't do things like that, then they were bounced out. We're not going to tolerate inappropriate behavior. So that's a real strong part of our program, our emphasis.
That's good.
And we had one student show up at a school in a nice button-down shirt, but had on shorts. Well, he didn't even get in the building. The principal met him at the door and sent him back to Magnolia and got on the phone and called us. He's out. That's just not acceptable.
So they have to act like adults, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
and
They
realize
have
that
to,
this
they
is
have
what
to
they're
act
gonna
like
do.
teachers, and we tell them to model themselves on the best teachers
Right.
that they see.
No,
When this
no chewing gum.
When this happens, is the student given another chance perhaps the next semester in these field experiences? Are they out of the teacher education program? What happens?
Well, we had a young lady in the junior high school observation wore a very nice leather outfit. The only problem was it was very short. And you have to remember those junior high boys have hormones.
Right. At that age.
And so that young lady was dressed in a nice outfit. It was just not appropriate. Now, we talked with her and did not dismiss her from the program. In the other cases where we have dismissed people, we have stressed the dress code and they have totally violated it. Like Mary mentioned, Rambo character showing up at a public school. And we look at it.
One of the things that I've noticed as a collaborating teacher is how busy these young people are when they come into the room. They write almost from the time they get there until in our case, the block is over. What are some of the things they're writing? Dr. McNeal, what things are they looking for?
They keep a journal of experiences that they have. And what we tell them to do is to look for certain things, and plus anything else that they might see that they want to put on there. One thing we stress is they are not there to evaluate the teacher. They're not qualified. They have no authority to do that. That's not what we want them to do anyway. What we want them to do is look at how does the teacher do things? What are students like? What are the students doing? How does the teacher motivate the class? So they've got a list of things that they are to look for. So that's what they're writing when they come in there. And it's really an interesting experience for me to read the journals because we really get an inside look at what's going on in the classroom. And some of the things that typically happen is they are amazed at experienced teachers. They'll typically say, boy, this teacher can do 3 things at once. Or these kids are eating out of this teacher's hand. I mean, they are really impressed. And one thing that we didn't think about when we started the program was the fact that they can follow these kids around and sometimes see the same kids in 2 different classrooms and see 2 different type of behaviors. And they learn from that. So the comparisons and things like that. One thing we have to tell them is, hey, this teacher's an experienced teacher, because some of them get depressed and say, I can't do that. Well, no first-year teacher can do that.
Right.
And they have to understand that there's a level of expertise that's developed through experience over the years.
What do you say to a student that might go into a classroom where there's no motivation, there's the students are doing whatever they want to do, running around the room, the teacher has no control? What do you tell a student about that? How do you let them know that that's not a good thing? And I mean, they know that, but...
We want them to observe that,
Right.
because that is a part of the school system. And the thing we point out to them, that the reason that those students are acting that way is because they're not being motivated, they're not being stimulated, they're not being challenged.
Right.
And as a teacher, we have to be able to do those things. And if we can do that in our classroom, we're not going to have the discipline problems.
But don't you think that it might scare them away? Because I know it'd probably scare me away, sitting there going, these kids are not minding, they're not doing anything. How could I do it if she can't do it? And she's taught for 15 years.
But you have to remember that they see up to 20 different teachers. So
Right.
they're not going to, that's rare, really. You don't see that many classes. That's been my experience from reading the journals, that most teachers are conscientious and try to do a good job. There are a few that don't function very well, but also, and they can contrast that with the other teachers that are effective. So I think that takes care of that.
Right.
But I tell them this story too about one student wrote about a teacher and said, "Oh, this class is terrible. The teacher's doesn't have any enthusiasm." And I happen to know this teacher, and her mother had been sick for a long time. She had missed a lot of days, and she finally came back to school. Her mother died, and she had used up all her days. She came to school the day after her mother died. She's an excellent teacher, but that day she was not an excellent teacher, and the kids were out of control. They're only there one day, and they need to understand that there's no way they can judge. For example, a student might do something in class that seems very minor, and a teacher may really jump on that student hard, but they don't know what that student had been doing 2 weeks before.
Right.
And that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. So we tell them that's another reason not to ever evaluate or be judgmental at that point, because you don't know. So they can write in there, the students are restless, the students are up and out of their chairs and things like that, but they don't get into why, because they have no way of knowing why.
That's right.
One thing we notice that depending on where it's elementary, junior high, or high school, you will find student characteristics
Right.
differ. And one group of students may be a little more active than another group. And they get to see all this, you know.
Right.
In Arkansas, one of the things the contract does with the teacher is specify duties. But there's always this little kicker, you know, down at the bottom that says, and all other duties assigned by the superintendent. What sort of provision is made for your level 1 students to get to see the extracurricular activities, or is that possible within the confines of the program?
Based on the time element, they may get there in time to see those teachers who have bus duty, hall duty. Other than that, no, they don't see much. Now, they do have conversations with the teachers, and the teacher might say, well, I sponsor a club, or I have lunchroom duty, or whatever. But as far as observing that, no.
So they would get some of that maybe in level 2?
Probably in 3.
In 3, in the student teaching?
Student teaching is where they would see that, because they go all day in student teaching now, which I think that's good. You need to know what it's like to be all day. I did my student teaching a half day.
Half day.
And I was tired after a half day. I really didn't know what I was getting into, full day and then coaching after school. And so that's an advantage. The thing to remember on Field 1 is that is an introductory field experience, and some things that we don't do are covered in the other field. It's a progressive type thing.
Right.
And they're covered in the later field experiences.
Now, we do talk with them about job market and contracts, and that's one of the things we tell them. There will be a little clause,
That's right.
other duties as assigned. And, if they're a physical education major going to coach, they're going to get the Gestapo duty.
That's right.
That's just part of it.
And first aid duty.
Yeah.
That's all. The first aid goes to the physical education.
Well, do either one of you have a favorite story you'd like to tell us before we wrap it up? About a field experience, a student, classroom?
I've got one. Some of these students are excellent writers. And I had a student observer one time who wrote it as it was happening. That's the way she wrote it. And she says, "Oh, I'm so excited. I'm pulling up in front of the school, and this is my first day of observation." She said, "Oh, there are a lot of students out in front of the school." And then I'm shortening this, but this is the gist of it. And then she says, "Oh, no, there seems to be a fight broken out." She said, "Oh, no." This one student, she wrote it out, I mean, as it happened. And it was just a really interesting experience to read that particular episode that she saw.
Did she stay in teaching?
She's, she stayed in the program, sure did.
So that first day didn't ruin it.
Yeah, we tell them that you may see that.
Right.
And so that's one thing, one journal that I remember specifically.
Mr. Neal, do you have a favorite story of?
No, not really, but, you know, I have some of these students in the intro class, they're beginning. Well, when they're in their student teaching block, I visit with them again, and it's always exciting to go in there and see, I had this one, I had that one made it, to see those kids succeed.
Well, gentlemen, Sally and I would like to thank you again for being with us today. Once again, our guests today on SAU Report have been Mr. Calvin Neal and Dr. Larry McNeal, professors at Southern Arkansas University and coordinators for Level 1 Field Experience Program. I'm Lori Porter.
And I'm Sally Camp, and we'd like to thank you for coming today.
We enjoyed it.
The SAU Report is a production of broadcast journalism students in the Department of Theater and Mass Communication at Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.